Hello everybody, welcome to Nostalgia Goggles. I'm Chris, also known as Retro Gaming Nerd, and today we're kind of coming back to a game franchise. The game that we're coming back to, or at least playing the sequel of, is Capcom vs SNK 2. Now, this is one of my favorite fighting games of all time, but that doesn't mean that it always holds up. Well, let's find out if it's still worth playing. So the story is more or less the same, except for Rugal and Akuma decided to join in and be like, yeah, let me join in this one, because really the only difference is that if you do well enough, Akuma or Rugal decide to show up at the ending and ruin all of the fun. So that's really it. I'll elaborate on that a little bit later because I feel like that belongs more in like gameplay or even presentation. With that being said, let's go on to gameplay. So I would argue that this is a perfect sequel when it comes to fighting games, especially since it fixes everything that the previous game kind of flubbed on. Now, the previous game didn't flub too much, but one of the things I absolutely didn't like is the ratio system, and it really didn't feel like there was a way around it. This one, you can absolutely just tell it to screw off. Because you definitely can play the ratio system, and even then, ratio is different. But instead of having that, if you're somebody like me that just wants to have characters on your team without worrying about building it and having like a number or whatever behind it, you can just do 3-on-3, or if you just want to play solo, you can do that as well. There's also a survival mode within this game where there's two versions of it. There's one where you're able to fight the whole roster, and then there's one where you just fight until you fail. And I kind of really like the choices that this game gives you. The bigger point of this game is that you have the groove system. I believe that returns, except it's a lot more complicated, where you have the CAP, which are the groove system that follows Capcom, and then the SNK, which follows, well, SNK games. I am, once again, as I said before, the first time I'm going into this, I do not know 100% the major difference between them. There definitely is one, but that's not what we're here for. We're here to see if the game holds up. I think the biggest change to this game mainly is also the roster. This is a huge roster. It's kind of funny how big it is, and yet we don't have Andy or Robert Garcia, which makes it even funnier because Robert is, in this canon, one of the people that funds it, and he just doesn't show up. And we also dogged my boy Andy because he's even referenced by Mai if you lose. It blows my mind that they didn't have these characters in the game. The thing I forgot to mention in this game is within arcade mode, a cool thing that also can happen is depending on your Capcom or SNK groove, you are able to get Rugal or Akuma. They show up at the ending of the game, and depending on how many points you have and the groove, they will show up. It is pretty dope because they come out of nowhere and they are difficult. They are fun to fight, and I feel like I'm very upset that I missed that. But yeah, one of the things you have to look out for is if you get a certain amount of points, and depending on the groove, you can fight those characters. Outside of all of that, this game pretty much plays like butter. I absolutely love it because it allows me to have more variety of characters. It has way more to it, and it just feels great. I absolutely love this game. I feel like anybody could pick it up, especially if you like fighting games. I feel like this game also can be super complicated if you like fighting games as well. There's just, I think, everything for everyone when it comes to this game. So with that being said, let's move on to the presentation. So the presentation on this game is goddamn immaculate, and I'm not even going to play with you. I absolutely love this game. The biggest problem that I do have with this game is kind of like the last one and also other fighting game crossovers is the fact that we definitely do have some reused sprites, such as Morgan and other characters that just kind of were dropped into this game. I don't know why they didn't make new sprites for them, but they definitely do look off, but it really doesn't matter because the game itself looks great. Once again, as I said before in the last one, the SNK characters look great, and I absolutely love all the characters that are here. Another great thing is that the music is also phenomenal. There's not a lot of music due to the fact that there's not a lot of stages. This game is one of those that runs off of not character music, but stage music. So you're going to hear, you know, the same song a few times while playing this game. Well, multiple times, especially if you play this game as much as I do. But the music in this game is just beautiful. I absolutely love it. Another thing that's also great about this game is the backgrounds. The backgrounds are really cool because they have a really nice use of 3D, and another thing that's really cool about them is they also have a nice use of characters from SNK and Capcom in the background, which sucks a little bit because it definitely acknowledges a few characters that are not in this game, but I also can't be too upset because the roster itself is huge. So here's hoping for next time. So hopefully there's a next time. So here's hoping for that with those characters. So realistically, none of this really matters if the game's price is too high. So with that being said, let's talk about accessibility. So there, surprise, surprise, is multiple versions of this game. There is the original PS2 version and the Dreamcast version, which go for separate prices. So let's start with the PlayStation version. The PlayStation version will set you back about $40, which I think is perfectly fine for this game. But the Dreamcast version goes for $50, which I believe is Japanese only. I have not found proof that there's an English version, but the Dreamcast version, you can probably find ways around it, or just buy a Japanese Dreamcast if you're a good boy, but there is ways around it, so if you really want, you can play it on your Dreamcast, which makes sense. It's awesome. There's also the Xbox and the GameCube version, which are the EO version, which is the easier to play version. I have no clue what that honestly means. I get it for the GameCube because the button layout is kind of odd, but Xbox, I don't know why you got it. Both versions go for around $60, but I've seen the GameCube one go for $30 sometimes, so it's kind of up in the air. I have not really even seen them out in public either, so I haven't really found this game out in public much either, but I feel like the prices for these games are pretty decent. I absolutely think that if you're going to go for one, get the PS2 version, mainly because it is about $40. And I think that that's like a safe bet for it. I really don't understand the difference between the other ones, which means I'll probably have to come back to the EO version if there is that big of a difference. If it really does make it easier, which I still don't understand, but that might also just be because I've been playing this game for so long. With that being said, I think this game is decently priced. So let's move on to the goods and the bads. There's a lot of good with this game, especially since coming off of the first one, we could have had just a recap with a little bit less of characters, but they decided to go above and beyond, and that's what this game feels like. It feels like it's above and beyond. I feel like, as I said it before, this feels like a perfect sequel. This is one of the kind of things I look for in a sequel, but even then they went above and beyond. I think the roster is great. I think another thing that's great is the groove system. It gives you so much, especially since it kind of rewards you for learning the groove system, for understanding the groove system. You can come back, you know, and actually learn what it's about. I love that. That's something that I feel like more games kind of need, is a way, especially in fighting games, to learn how to play it differently. I absolutely love that. Can I talk about the roster and how I love it again? I don't feel like I've stressed that enough. This is a great roster, especially since if you are somebody like me that really has so many favorite characters, you can make so many great team-ups, and that just feels awesome. The presentation of this game is also outstanding. I feel like this is the way that fighting games should be, and this game, this is one of the games that has absolutely spoiled me with sprite art. I cannot believe how well they did the SNK characters, and even some of the Capcom characters. I also like how this game gets a little bit more obscure with your characters, having characters from Samurai Showdown, Last Blade, and Rival Schools. There's not many of them here, but they are also here. Also Garou Mark of the Wolves with, you know, Rock Howard. And I absolutely love that. They decided to look inward and go, man, who are the fighting characters we want? And they feel good here. They don't feel out of place, and I absolutely love that. They also do not feel too imbalanced. I think the sword characters are a little hard to get around, but that is just going to be how it is. I think you can definitely beat them. I haven't had that much of an issue with them, but I think it's really cool to have them. They are definitely part of SNK's roster, especially because that's, you know, they are. So I love that they're there. I absolutely love the music. I cannot stress enough how much I love this game. This game is just outstanding. I love it. It's just beautiful. I love this game. I can't stress enough that if you're looking for a crossover game, that this is the one to go for if you're somebody that wants more than just Capcom versus Marvel. Marvel versus Capcom. You get my point. With that being said, let's move on to the bads. They did my man Andy wrong, and I feel like that's the worst I can say about this game. I only complain because I'm a big fan of Fatal Fury, and I would love to have a complete team. I could sit here and complain about the roster, but really the only problem is that Andy isn't here. I'm also going to spoil the next one. Andy's not in any of these crossovers, and I don't know why he's not in any of these crossovers. I feel like that's one of the dirtiest things you could have done. You have Joe, you have Terry, you even have Rock, you even have Mai, and she references, you know, you even have King, right? And I feel like you can make a version of the women's team from King of Fighters, but you just cannot make the Fatal Fury team. I have no clue if they just don't like Andy or not. I don't know what it is, and this is not even a complaint. It's just I just think it's funny that Andy did not make it in any of these games, because I have no clue if you're gonna watch SVC Chaos. So I feel like this is the place to talk about this. And if you are gonna watch SVC Chaos, thank you. That would be really cool. I have no clue when that one's coming out, so I think that's kind of the end of the trilogy. I have no clue if I'm ever gonna do the handheld ones. It's not because they're hard to record. It's just I just don't. It's so hard to review those and then look at these big behemoths of a game. So, with that being said, let's go to final thoughts. So is Capcom vs SNK 2 worth playing? Well, the answer is absolutely. I think that this is a better game than the first one. I think that this one's a little bit more accessible with more characters and so much more to really do in the game, and you don't have to unlock characters. It's just easier to get your hands on as well, due to it being on the PS2 and other consoles. I just think that this is a better game, and I think it's definitely worth it, especially if you're a fan of fighting games. So, with that being said, I think it's worth it. What's your favorite fighting game? I know I've asked this question before, but there's only so many questions you can ask. Well, what's your favorite SNK or Capcom fighting game? I guess is the best one to put for that. And with that being said, I'll see you guys next time on Nostalgia Goggles. Bye!